Hello, students. You know that in the last part of our chapter from the diary of Anne Frank, we had discussed how Anne Frank and her family had hidden themselves in Amsterdam during the German occupation of the Netherlands in World War II, and how Anne Frank had died of typhus. Typhus is actually a kind of parasite which causes fever, headache, and rashes. And how she wrote everything in her diary. So, diary is a kind of a chronicle or a written record which she kept to write everything, and it is a musing of an insightful mind. So she is seen as having deep understanding, and how she has described everything here about the Holocaust victims. Holocaust is something where a large number of people die and everything is destroyed. Let us continue now what in the second part of the chapter what she has described. Since no one would understand a word of my stories to Kitty. Now you know that she is describing about her diary, and she also said how how paper has more patience than people, and she started writing a diary. She also told us that there are more than 30 people whom she is surrounded by, but still she has not a single friend, and so she cannot confide into anybody, and thus she writes a diary. So here, a word of my stories to Kitty. Kitty, we know, is the name of her diary. If I were to plunge or to dive right inside, so how to start writing the diary? I would better provide a brief sketch of my life, much as I dislike doing so. So she's planning to start writing a diary, and she is trying to give a brief introduction of her life so that people can understand it properly. My father, the most adorable father I have ever seen. She liked her father a lot, but not her mother, and he was very adorable, he was very lovable, and he didn't marry my mother until he was 36. So at 36 he married Edith Frank, who was 25. My sister, the elder sister, Margot Frank, was born in Frankfurt in Germany in 1926. So this is the year she was born. I was born on 12th June 1929. So there's a difference of 3 years. I lived in Frankfurt, Germany until I was 4 years old. My father emigrated to Holland. Emigrated means moving out from your country, and he went to Holland in 1933. My mother, Edith Hollander Frank, went with him to Holland in September. So they are telling about that earlier they were living in Frankfurt, and later they moved to Holland. While Margot and I were sent to Ashen to stay with our grandmother. So we have seen that they spent a few years with their grandmother too. Margot went to Holland in December, and I followed in February. So Margot was the first one to leave the grandmother and go, and then Anne Frank also left in February. When I was plunked down on the table as a birthday present for Margot. And you know that uh, the younger siblings are always like a birthday present for the elder ones. And the elder ones kind of play with them, like them, and they are treated in this way. So she's telling for herself that she was like a present for Margot. I started right away at the Montessori Nursery School. Now she's describing about her early education. I stayed there until I was 6. So until she was 6, she studied in this school, at which time I started in the first form. Now we know that they have different kind of grades. This is a first form. Finally, she has entered. In the sixth form, my teacher was Mr. Cuperus. Sorry, Mrs. Cuperus here, the headmistress. Now she is describing about her very nice rapport and bonding with Mrs. Cuperus, the headmistress. At the end of the year, we were both in tears. So we can see such a nice bonding she shared with the headmistress, that when she was departing, they were both in tears. As we said, a heartbreaking farewell. So they had to part each other, and it was really hard on both of them. In the summer of 1941, Grandma fell ill. Now, it is a diary, so you can see that the dates, the months, etc., everything is given here, and you should remember these things. In 1941, Grandma fell ill and had to have an operation. So my birthday passed with little celebration. Obviously, if somebody is not well, you won't enjoy in the family. The family members are very closely knit with each other. Grandma died in January 1942, and finally she died in 42 Jan. No one knows how often I think of her and still love her. You know that the early part of childhood was spent with her, and she is telling us that nobody knows that I still love her a lot, and I often think of her. And that grandchildren are in very much close association and love with their grandparents. This is a very special bonding. This birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the other. So they celebrated here in 1942, and Grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. And one candle was lit for Grandma also. The four of us are still doing well. That means mother, father, me, and Margot. We are all right. And that brings me to the present date. Now, what is the present date right now? 20th June 1942. So this is when she had written about earlier time, past time, and now she would regularly keep on writing. And the solemn dedication of my diary. Solemn means a serious or grave dedication to my diary. Now let us see how it is written date-wise. The diary, Saturday, 20th June 1942. This is the date, and we can see how she has addressed the diary. Dearest Kitty, our entire class is quaking in its boots. Quaking means shaking because of fear and nervousness. Now, if it is result time, everybody is nervous. So they are all quaking in their boots. The feet are shaking in the boots. The reason, of course, is the forthcoming meeting in which the teachers decide who will move up to the next form. Next form means who will move up to the next class. So, yes, you would all be excited as well as nervous to know that you have been promoted and promoted well. And who will be kept back? And there are some who are not able to make up to the next form or the next class, so they are held back. Half the class is making bets. Now what all these children are doing, that they are betting, जो शर्त लगाते हैं, that is betting. So they are betting that who will pass and who will fail. GN and I laugh. ourselves silly at the two boys behind us. So they are laughing at each other, maybe considering that they won't pass. So GN and I, so because this is a personal diary, you can write short forms also, because you know that what is the full form of GN. Obviously, it is a name. CN and Jax, who have staked their entire holiday savings on their bet, and so much are they betting at this, who will pass and who will fail, that they have even spent or put their whole saving at stake. That means they can even lose their money if they happen to fail or they lose the bet. From morning to night, it's you are going to pass. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. So, students are normally not confident enough that they are going to pass, and the others are telling each other that you are going to pass, and the person is not ready to accept. Even G's pleading glances and my angry outbursts can't calm. Pleading glances and my angry outbursts can't calm them down. Okay. So, because everybody is just betting at each other, so she's saying that even G's pleading glances, that means requesting looks, and my angry outburst, that means I'm angrily bursting out loudly, can't calm down. That please calm down, stop it now, don't express your strong feelings. If you ask me, there are so many dummies that about a quarter of the class should be kept back. And now Anne Frank is actually giving her frank opinion about some of the students or fellow classmates. So what she is saying, that there are many who are dummies, that means persons of low intelligence, that about a quarter of the class, even she goes on to saying that one-fourth of the class should be kept or held back. But teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. But this is the opinion of Anne about teachers, that they are very unpredictable creatures. They can do anything. Maybe they can pass the students who don't actually deserve. So, this is what her opinion also we can see here about teachers. I'm not so worried about my girlfriends and myself. That means we are all right. We'll make it. That means we are going to pass and we are going to move on to the next form. The only subject I'm not sure about is maths. Otherwise, everything is all right, but Anne Frank is not at all good at maths. And maths is always a problem for most of the students. Anyway, all we can do is wait. So, because this is the only thing, even only teachers will tell us the results. So, we just have to wait. Until then, we keep telling each other not to lose heart. So you can see how a similar kind of insecurity and similar kind of feeling is shared by the classmates. I get along pretty well with all my teachers. Now, Anne Frank is telling about how good a rapport she shares with all the teachers. So it is pretty well. There are 9 of them. So there are 9 teachers, 7 men and 2 women. Mr. Keesing. Now there is one teacher and his name is Mr. Keesing, the old fogey, a dull, old-fashioned person. So he is a teacher who is dull, who is old-fashioned, and he teaches maths. So was annoyed with me. There is some problem with my maths teacher. He always remains annoyed with me. He dislikes me and gets annoyed at times with me for ages. For a long time, he disliked me and gets annoyed because I talked so much. And there is a reason also behind it. It's not a baseless thing. I actually talk a lot. I'm very talkative. So here we understand and we get to know that Anne Frank is a very talkative student. After several warnings, many warnings have also been issued uh, by Mr. Keesing, he assigned me extra homework. Now, after giving many warnings, obviously the teacher has to give punishment. And this punishment was actually in the form of homework, that you do this extra homework, an essay on the subject. And what is this strange and weird kind of a subject? A chatterbox. Now, who gives such kind of a topic for an essay? But it is just a punishment. So, Mr. Keesing gave it to Anne Frank. A chatterbox. What can you write about that? I would worry about that later, I decided. So at the first thought was, what will I write? But then I thought that I will think about it later. I jotted down the title in my book. I just wrote down the homework that was given to me. It was actually given as a punishment. Tucked it in my bag. Now the notebook was kept in my bag and tried to keep quiet. So I just kept quiet. I did not respond or react in any way at that moment. That evening, after I had finished the rest of my homework, the note about the essay caught my eye, that I have to do this homework as a punishment. I began thinking about the subject while chewing the tip of my fountain pen. You know that it is a very peculiar habit of many people, that many students especially, that they, while they are thinking deeply, they start chewing the tip of their pen. Anyone could ramble on and leave big spaces between the words. You know, when you don't have much content to write in the on the paper, then you leave a lot of space and you just write a few words, and you try to present that the answer is written. So it is just ramble on. You talk or write aimlessly for long. You're just writing, filling pages, but it is absolutely meaningless. So in this way, anybody can write by leaving a lot of space also, so that pages are easily filled. But the trick was to come up with convincing arguments. He should be convinced also, otherwise he will give me another assignment to prove the necessity of talking. So now she has to prove that talking is also a very necessary thing, a very necessary trait for a student. I thought and thought, and suddenly I had an idea. Finally, she came up with an idea what to write exactly that it becomes a convincing argument. I thought and thought. I wrote the 3 pages Mr. Keesing had assigned me and was satisfied. You know, after all, it was an essay, so 3 pages were to be written, and now she's satisfied. I argued that talking is a student's trait. The first argument that she gave was talking is a student trait. So obviously she is also a student and she has to follow this trait. And that I would do my best to keep it under control. So first thing is that it is a trait of the student, and yes, I will try, because I'm very, very talkative. I will try to keep it under control. I will not let it or allow it to go uh, beyond being bearable. But that I would never be able to cure myself of the habit. But at the same time, she is saying that she is not able to completely cure herself of this habit, because she is declaring it as a genetic habit that she has inherited, or we can say inherited from her mother, since my mother talked as much as I did. So, if not more. So, she is even more talkative, but at least not less than me. So that means the mother is also very talkative. So if the mother is such, the child would obviously be. And there's not much you can do about inherited traits. So yes, about genetically inherited traits, you cannot do much. But so on one hand, she said that as a student, we can talk. Second thing, that I will try to control it. Third thing is that genetically I have inherited this trait, so I would never be able to cure it ever. And that is completely. So she has given a kind of logical and rational ideas about it. Mr. Keesing had a good laugh at my arguments, and when next day Mr. Keesing read the arguments, he also started laughing. But when I proceeded to talk my way through the next lesson, he assigned me a second essay. But now, when he was not completely convinced, or he did not actually forgive her. So, what did he do? He gave another essay this time. This is the second essay. Remember, the first essay was Chatterbox. Second is, because she's still talking a lot, this time he gave an incorrigible chatterbox. Incorrigible means someone who cannot be corrected, cannot be changed. So she is an incorrigible chatterbox. And now you write an essay on this, and handed it in, and Mr. Keesing had nothing to complain about for 2 whole lessons. And now she handed over the homework, this homework also, to him. And yes, for 2 whole lessons, he did not say anything. He was convinced for some time. However, during the third lesson, he would finally had enough. And Frank, as punishment for talking in class, write an essay entitled, what is the title of the essay? Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. Now, can you see how funny is the topic of essay? Suppose you have to write this kind of an essay, how difficult it would be. That there is an onomatopoeic word also, quack quack, and then Mistress Chatterbox, and you have to write about an essay on this. So now this is a third time, and how much content do you have? And you should also be writing something convincing, so that finally he forgives you. So let us see what she wrote. The class roared. You can see in the picture also that the whole class started laughing at this kind of a weird topic being given to her as a punishment. I had to laugh too, though I had nearly exhausted my ingenuity. That means everything original that I had was already written down, penned down. Now what more can I write on the topic of chatterboxes? It was time to come up with something else. Now I should try something else, so that he becomes convinced, and that also permanently. Something original. My friend San, who's good at poetry. Now this friend is very good at poetry, offered to help me write the essay from beginning to end in verse. And now she has taken to a new style of writing, and that is writing verses. That is poetic lines that she would now use to write. And I jumped for joy that yes, this is something new. I have not tried it, and maybe Mr. Keesing will like it and maybe forgive me. Mr. Keesing was trying to play a joke on me with this ridiculous subject. Obviously, he was trying to make a joke of me by giving such a funny subject to me, that everybody else would also laugh at me. But I would make sure the joke was on him. But if you have presence of mind, and if you can write properly, you can turn the joke on him also. So let us see if she is able to do it. I finished my poem, and it was beautiful. It was about a mother duck and a father swan. So we see there's a pair here, mother duck and father swan, with 3 small baby ducklings. You know, ducklings are the baby ducks who were bitten to death. And what happened to these ducklings or the offsprings of duck? That they were bitten by to death. They were eaten up, and they were finally killed by the father because they quacked too much. Okay, we know that bite, bit, bitten. So they were finally killed by the father. Now, who could be such a father who can kill his own children? But this is just a story that she has created in the form of verses, so that Mr. Keesing is able to realize, and he abstains from giving another uh, essay as a punishment. Luckily, Mr. Keesing took the joke the right way. A person should have a sense of humor also, and if humor is taken the right way, then everything is fine. Otherwise, sometimes people get annoyed, and then you can't do anything about it. So he took the joke in the very right way. That means he understood everything nicely. He understood the point of view of Anne Frank also. Luckily, Mr. Keesing took it. He read the poem to the class, adding his own comments. So he was so impressed that he read out loudly, and he even added his own comments and to several other classes as well. So it was really nice, and it was appreciated well. Since then, I have been allowed to talk and haven't been given, assigned, or any extra homework. So I'm not given or assigned any other extra homework. Finally, we have patched up, and he has understood me. On the contrary, Mr. Keesing's always making joke these days. You know, can you see this difference in Mr. Keesing? Because earlier when he was introduced as an old fogey who taught maths. So here a dull old-fashioned man he was, and from a very dull and old-fashioned man, now can you see he is completely converted and changed, and now he is himself cracking jokes. That means he has revived back his sense of humor, and everything is going fine. So this is what is a very small extract taken from the novel The Diary of a Young Girl. And with this small extract, you would be able to understand various character traits and various behavior traits of Anne Frank. And this is a window through which you can see her whole personality. I hope you would have understood the chapter. Just go through the chapter nicely and revise it well, and try to find the question answers.